Welcome to Akrinos Access. I'm Eric Matei, joined here on this episode by Dr. Chris Lopez, as we're going to be talking about the world of employment contracts and negotiations in modern optometry. Dr. Lopez, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here, Eric. Thanks a lot. Please call me Chris.
Sure thing. Well, Chris, again, man, thank you so much for joining us. I know we've got a ton to get into, but before we do that, why don't you just briefly share a little bit about how and why we've come to having this conversation, right? How you've developed this expertise over, quite frankly, the content we're going to be talking about this evening.
Yeah, well, essentially, summer of fourth year of optometry school, I just started to apply to a bunch of jobs, and I kind of thought it was crazy because essentially that's a year before I would have started working. And I just applied to a bunch of places, and I'm introverted by nature and shy by nature. So I was going through that. I was like, man, this stuff is hard. And they don't teach us how to apply or how you should make your resume or CV and how to interview and how to negotiate. And the more and more I did it, I realized it's like a skill. It's like anything else. And you don't go into a gym and start squatting 800 pounds, right? You got to put some time in and you got to develop. And it's the same thing with this contract career stuff in negotiating. So really, I just did it a bunch and got pretty comfortable with it and realized that my classmates and other younger docs could benefit from it. So I started doing it quite a bit, and I chatted with Dat Bowie and Aaron Newfield, co-founders of Odie's on Finance, and Julie Fan is a part of that too. And I started offering the career services type of stuff through Odie's on Finance about a couple years ago. And it's been awesome. It's been crazy busy, which is a good thing, but it's just kind of blowing up. And I'm just feel really grateful and blessed to have the opportunity to talk to so many of our colleagues each and every week and help them walk them through this stuff.
That's awesome. And Chris, yeah, again, amazing stuff you're doing. I know you and I have some other projects we're working on. Looking forward to seeing how those collaborations unfold. So on that note, let's go ahead and jump into it and kind of start with which you shared with me, you believe is like core tenet number one, and that is discovering professional fit, right? And I suppose also, let's also preface this conversation with the fact that we've got many viewers out there that are on kind of both sides of this conversation, right? We've got those doctors who are perhaps looking to negotiate for themselves, represent themselves in seeking an opportunity, but we also have those doctors who are in practice ownership, who are wanting to compete for the best and the brightest talent out there in optometry today. So let's start number one with talking about professional fit, professional vision, and what it means to really find the right practice.
Yeah, that's a great topic. We could talk an hour just about this, right? And this is a big component of what I chat with our colleagues about during our contract review sessions. And I think it kind of boils down to finding your why. And we've all heard of the book and the Why book by Simon Sinek, right? And I wish there was a one size fits all strategy for this. And I don't think there is. I think some people feel more comfortable jotting down what they want out of life, what they want out of their career, out of their professional life and work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. And you write it down and you just go for that. I think on the other hand, it's hard to do that. And then we don't always know what we want. So I think if you just dive into something and bump along things along the way to find your true why, that's okay too. I mean, there's just different ways to go about it. The good thing is we're optometrists, and there are so many opportunities, unique opportunities in different settings, in different cities and regions across the country. There's no shortage of jobs. And so I think what I would encourage our younger colleagues is, if you go into something and it's not a good fit, that's okay. I mean, you're young and you can always find something else. And now's the time to get that stuff out of the way so that you find out what you do want out of life and out of your career early on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose if I'm hearing you right, it's quite inspiring to hear you speak of this, and that is the process of discovering professional fit and professional vision is truly that. It is a process, right?
Yeah.
For those viewers out there that are recent grads or in the opening 5 to 10 years of their career, you likely are still in this process of discovery, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that being said, though, then I suppose it becomes a matter of, if we're talking professional fit, there's something to be said for scope of care, right? Considering that modern optometry is a vast expanse, full scope of care. So why don't you speak to that as far as navigating and seeking out and finding that right professional fit regarding your scope of care, professional fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Optometry is weird. I mean, I think on part of it, it's you read stuff and it's doom and gloom, and this company is going to put us out of business, and then we're going to lose out on patient care because of this stuff. And on the other hand, there's so many innovations and so much new technology and services that are coming out that we're going to be able to provide to patients, that I don't actually think there's any shortage of opportunity anywhere in the near future. I mean, I think our industry is bound to explode. And if we're talking about scope of care, I am really excited and pleased that by far, the vast majority of younger docs that I speak with coming out of school, Eric, they're hungry and they're eager and they want to practice full scope and they want to be doing the new cutting edge stuff. And fortunately, schools do a pretty good job of teaching us that newest technology, newest diagnostics and treatment and all that kind of stuff. So most docs that I chat with are really eager to continue to push the profession forward. And I think that says a lot about them. And I think it's a positive and gives us a positive outlook on what we have to look forward to. I mean, and if you think about the numbers, our population is getting older, right? Our population is getting older, and ophthalmologists, they're not creating new residencies, they're staying stagnant. Well, who the heck is going to fill that gap of medical care and scope? It's us. It's our responsibility
Absolutely.
to do that. The opportunities are really endless. So I don't buy into the doom and gloom stuff. I think we're in a really cool industry. We can do a lot of really great services and do a lot of good for our patients and make some money along the way, which is important too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more. Look, you mentioned longevity, and let's also add to that lifestyle choices and environmental factors, right? We're seeing the need for vision and medical eye care is continue to climb, right? Because by the same token, let's not discount routine vision care. I mean, I look at my children ages 7th and 6th grade, and I look at how many of their peers need correction versus thinking of my generation, turned 40 this year, right? So cheers to class of 2000. So looking at my generation, though, when I think back to 7th and 6th grade, not very many. So again, the point here across the expanse of routine vision and absolutely medical eye care, and particularly with what you said regarding changing dynamics in eye care, right? And seeing the changes in ophthalmology, the changes in optometry. It's an extremely exciting time. By the way, I suppose now we should inject for anyone tuning in live, for all we know, Chris, for all we know, someone's watching this video like 6 months down the line once the bill has passed. But while we're talking about scope of care, I believe California right now is in the throes of their big expansion bill. So I don't
They
know
are.
if you
That's
have
what
any.
I've read.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I think it might be on the governor's desk, ready to sign. And so that's exciting. I mean, we'll see how that goes. And
absolutely.
it's going to continue. I mean, it's just an avalanche effect. And at first, it was just a couple states with advanced scope, like Louisiana, where you're at,
Yes.
which is awesome. And then a couple more states and a couple more states. In the last 3, 4, 5 years, look how many states have added laser procedures. Yeah, it's going to continue. And I think that's a good thing for us and for our patients.
Absolutely. So that being said, it's going to continue, which means, and obviously the reason why we're going to see this expansion of care continue is because, again, we've got this growing public health need. We've got more and more people that need care, and optometry can deliver that full scope of vision and medical eye care. So that being said, increasing demand, increasing opportunity. So now let's shift gears and start talking about employment contracts, right? So let's start to get into some of that nitty gritty. And by the way, I would imagine that some of our a number of our live viewers may be really here to kind of hear some of your wisdom and some of your insights on that. So by all means, please drop in the chat. If you've got any questions or like to contribute to the conversation, please do go ahead and drop in the chat. So Chris, let's go ahead and jump into this whole world of employment contracts. For starters, what are the common elements of a contract? And then we'll talk about kind of what some of the watchouts are.
Yeah, so there's lots of elements to a contract, and basic ones are compensation, bonus if applicable, benefits, employee responsibilities, what you will be responsible for, your duties essentially, work schedule, work hours, Monday through Friday. There are often devotion or exclusion clauses, which means you get to work for this place and only this place and no other place unless the employer gives you permission to. And there's some implications there. If you're full-time and you don't care about filling in, who cares about that? But if you're 3 days a week and you need to fill in a couple more days, something like that could have some bigger implications for you. So, I mean, those are some basic ones. There's restrictive covenant. And under restrictive covenant, I like to think of 4 areas. And those 4 areas are non-compete. And we've all heard of non-competes. We're familiar with it. And
hot topic, yes.
Hot topic. And that tends to be, in my opinion, the biggest sticking point in contract negotiations is
okay.
non-compete. It's reasonable for an employer to want to protect their business interests, right? They don't want to hire someone for 3 years and have them open up right next door. On the other hand, if you are a young doc and you're moving to a different state, small town to practice here, you don't entirely want to be restricted from working somewhere else if it doesn't work out. So there's non-competes. And there is non-solicitation. So non-solicitation of patients and staff. After you leave, you can't steal our staff, you can't steal our patients. And then non-solicitation of referral sources. So you can't steal our referral sources and all that after you leave too. So that's like the restrictive covenant section of a contract.
Sure.
And there's other ones. There's fee schedules. Employers reserve the right to set the fees as they see fit. And then termination. And termination can be with cause and without cause. Usually in contracts. And with cause, an employer can terminate you immediately with cause if you do bad stuff, if you go to jail or drugs or lose your license and stuff like that. And then there's without cause, which essentially means either employer or employee can terminate the agreement for any reason with however many days notice. So I guess those are some of the basics, but there's a lot. I mean, I can list 24 other aspects that could be listed in contracts.
Absolutely. So on that note, what would you say in your experience are some of the watchouts as far as when someone is reviewing their offer in that contract? What are some of the watchouts?
Some of the watchouts are non-compete, and it can be a big sticking point. And non-competes are difficult because there are differences in opinions of what would be enforceable or not.
And I suppose that's probably a question. I know it's a question on my mind. Are they enforceable?
Most of the people that I've spoken with and attorneys say that if reasonable, they could be enforced. But what's reasonable? I mean, how subjective is that?
Right.
I think non-competes are going to be, they're not even going to be a thing in the next 15, 20 years. Like California, I believe, has essentially said, don't bother with non-competes. We're not going to enforce them. So that's why now more and more of the California contracts that I see don't have non-competes, because they essentially know that the precedence now is that they're not going to be enforced.
Sure.
But it's tough. I mean, if you have a 5-year, 30-mile non-compete in Houston, Texas, how can that fly?
Is that a real figure? Have you seen something like to that extreme? I mean, that seems rather extreme.
It is extreme, but it's subjective. So you can have a 20-mile non-compete in rural Iowa. Yeah, sure. I mean, the next town is 25 miles over.
Right. Sure.
And Houston, big city, maybe more like 3 to 5 miles. I've seen no non-competes And I've seen 50-mile non-competes, 3 years from multiple locations, and associates have signed that because they didn't know what kind of implications that could have. Now,
Wow.
would that be enforced? Man, how could it? But I don't know. Employers, a big employer would have more money than you, and you'd be closer to
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Uh,
that tends to be a big issue. I think non-compete is a watch out. I think another watch out would be a termination notice. So, like I said, that you can put in your notice for whatever reason within however many days. Typically, I see 30 to 90. And from an employer standpoint, obviously, you want longer because it would give you more time to find a replacement, right?
sure.
And as an associate, you'd probably want less because it means you would be able to leave sooner. So usually 30 to 90 days, but I've seen 4 to 6 months. So if you think about the implications, 6 months for an employer, great. It gives them a lot of time to replace you. But if you're that associate, what are you going to do? Interview for another job and then say, they'll say, great, we want you to start next month. I can't have a 6-month non-compete. Well, they might move on and hire someone else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Wow.
some big watchouts in contracts, and I've seen that, and that's a big deal. And we don't like to think about that stuff because the idea is, well, I don't want to think about it if it doesn't work out. You kind of have to think about it if it doesn't work out, because how many of us graduate and stay at our first job for our entire careers? That's becoming less and less common.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also important, I suppose, to put that in the context of realizing that, where you are as a grad, or where anyone is right now, any viewer, no matter where you are in your career practice life cycle, where you are now versus 3 versus 5 versus 10 years, things are going to change. And I think that's one of these key considerations when looking at these employment contracts, is realizing, wow, to what degree am I limiting my ability to pivot, right?
Yep.
Okay, so on that note, now if we move from contracts themselves and kind of structure these contracts and some of these watchouts, again, really great insights you shared regarding non-competes and some of these other clauses out there. Now let's shift gears into the negotiations, right? Because I know that's another hot area. And I think first and foremost for anyone who's a job seeker is know that you can negotiate, right? It's no different from purchasing a vehicle or purchasing a home. That offer is just that. It's an offer. So why don't you speak a little bit about that? And particularly, what are some of the common negotiation items that you can seek out to better your opportunity?
Yeah. So simply put, I think most things in a contract are negotiable. The difference is, though, sometimes I'll talk to associates and they say, well, boss said, or the employer said that they can't negotiate that. Yes, they can. They don't want to negotiate in most cases.
Right.
They can't give you more money. I can't change this. Well, you could. You don't want to, but that's a really strong negotiation tactic from an employer standpoint, because you say can't, and then we think, okay, well then I'll just drop it, and they win. That's a good negotiation for the employer. But I think most things are negotiable, really. Compensation, benefits, PTO, all that stuff. A couple of non-negotiable items, in my opinion, are health insurance and retirement, because I mean, there's rules that are in place, and employers have to be real careful about not giving you this health insurance and you this and you this much and you that much, and same thing with retirement, and 5% and 2% and different allowances. So health insurance and retirement, I don't really see those as negotiable items. Is to take what you can get and appreciation of that. Most other things, though, oh yeah, they're negotiable, and we've negotiated some crazy things, and part of that negotiation is leverage.
Okay. Okay. When you say some crazy things, when you say you've negotiated some crazy things, like what? Example.
I probably don't want to spill too many of the beans, or else
I mean,
no. But big changes in compensation, and
really?
a change in a bonus structure that's far more beneficial with the right incentives in place.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Changing compensation structures from a base salary to a production base, which could have huge financial implications for that associate.
Absolutely.
And most employers that I speak with too, because I don't just talk to associates. I'm gonna take a step back here, Eric. a lot of the contract review discussions that I have and sessions that I have with our colleagues are not me talking to young docs and saying, rah, 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 you're getting hosed, you need to ask for more money. That's not what it is at all. It's more about putting into perspective their situation and how that compares to other people in their area or regional norms, or maybe even how their production can drive their desire for more money. It's like, you want more money? Well, let's look at the numbers. Do you deserve it? Are you earning enough to allow for that? And I think part of that is not just so much that associates want, and we're millennials and we're entitled and all we want is to take more and more and more. But part of it is schools do a great job, like we said, of teaching us the latest and greatest in technology and diagnosis and disease and all that. There's just not enough time to learn about this, all this other stuff. And even schools that have decent practice management courses, there's not enough time to do all this stuff. So a lot of the associates I chat with don't understand how their production can drive profits and business growth and their own income. So a lot of it is putting their compensation package in the contract in perspective. So it's not rah, rah, rally against employers. And to the other side of that, the employers that I speak with, I think I've been speaking with a lot actually, and I was surprised by that even a few months ago, because I was naive enough to think that if you've been doing this for 30 years, you know everything about contracts and hiring and stuff like that. It's not the case at all. If you've been solo for 30 years, you don't know the first thing about hiring another doc. So part of my conversations with them is they want to pay this much. Well, why would they accept your job if that other place is paying this much? So how can you create a better package to incentivize docs to move to your area? So a lot of it is about demonstrating value, creating value, and really just perspective. It's not anti this and anti that.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. And because a fair amount of the work that we do also is in helping work a lot with 30-year-old established doctor has the associate, and they've been talking for a few years, hey, let's make this happen. And now they're ready to do it. And, so we get the opportunity to help those take place. And it's a lot of these same themes. And I think one of these key takeaways that you're touching on, that no matter whether you're the job seeker or you're the practice owner, it's about coming to an equitable arrangement. And the fact is, there's a lot of really fascinating ways to do that in this day and age, given the scope of care, the opportunity in modern optometry, and so many novel ways that you can provide more care to more patients in the community and thus reap the reward for it, right? So you talked about the negotiable items of the contract, right? Which you said was, certainly there's some non-negotiables, right? Like, benefits and retirement and PTO and some of these other things. But regarding other negotiables, you said regarding salary, production bonuses, definitely a lot of negotiations on that front. I'll have to ask you offline to give me an idea, that teaser of how big some of these deals have been that you've been able to get work. So okay, so now share with folks.
Increase in salary is one.
Wow. That was pretty wow. Congrats. That's huge. What did he say? I think he said 40? 40. Yeah. That's pretty radical. That's significant. Congratulations, man. Congratulations to you and whoever that client was that you helped to do that. That's big. But I think what's also important to note is that that's also big for that oh, Dat just dropped something. What did Dat say? Oh yeah. the ROI. No, absolutely, man. And I know, Chris, you've sent a couple of folks our way that are looking to get into practice ownership. And yeah, absolutely, the ROI of what you do, what you deliver, a 1-hour conversation with you, and what that can mean to someone in securing that contract is huge.
So part of that return ROI stuff too is when we talk to people, I don't want to give the impression that every single person I talk to is getting amazing deals, right? But part of it is negotiating a better value proposition for that associate. And part of the employer standpoint is helping to entice great docs to join their practice.
Absolutely.
So for some of those associates docs that I chat with too, some of the conversations can be a little more difficult because they could be super stoked about this opportunity and they think it's the greatest thing ever. And I looked through and I was like, man, there's a lot of restrictions here. We should probably look into some of these. And by the end, they're like, well, that's kind of a bummer because I was really looking forward to it. And that's not me saying don't sign or discouraging, but they should know. And then plenty of those people shoot me an email or follow up and say, you know what, I decided to turn that down, but something better came along the way. That's not a bad thing at all. And
Right.
other times I'll chat with people and I'll say, you know what, I think this contract is solid. I think it's great. You're getting a great deal. And you're happy there. And that's not a wasted session with me either, because who's not willing to pay that for peace of mind when they've been stressed out for the past 4 months, not knowing whether they're
absolutely.
getting paid or not.
Absolutely.
So again, a lot of it is just perspective.
So I guess then the question is, how many of them end up getting a change made?
Most of them.
Most of them. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also, there's something else that you mentioned that I think is critical to point out is that this is all equitable win-win. And I think it's important for everyone to understand this isn't, and I mean, I think that's incredibly impressive. And that's a big number, right? When you threw out like that $40,000 swing. But by all means, it's important to not look at, pardon me?
Most are not that high.
Oh yeah. But regardless of what the number is, it's important to point out that it comes to be an equitable win-win. And moving from there, right? So, because I want to point out, I don't want those practice owners that are viewing listening to this, viewing this, to think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to compete and hire that associate. I'm here to say you can. Now, there's a process to doing it, to orchestrating that comp plan, but absolutely you can. But it's important to know, and I think in all of this, it's important as far as like, you know, this little section on contract negotiations. It's important to understand that a lot of these terms are definitely negotiable. Compensation, base salary, bonus compensation, PTO, bennies and perks, what have you, definitely negotiable. So can you speak briefly regarding like the process? You know, like, so let's say someone's looking at this right now and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I really have this weird little feeling. I think I want to push back. What is the process to go and negotiate? Should folks be intimidated? Is this kind of like, you know?
Great question. I'm going to take one step back and address one of those other points you just mentioned too. The ROI and the employers listening to this, most people are not getting $40,000 increases. Okay, they're much smaller than that. But it's not just compensation; it's other things that are negotiable. But I don't even let's say someone negotiates a $4,000 raise. Okay, I don't see that as a loss from the employer perspective either. I think it's an investment because
exactly
by far the number one reason our colleagues reach out to me is because associates is because they don't feel valued. And when we think of feeling valued, you know, it's a soft word and that's ushy gushy. No, it's not. It's a real thing. And people don't feel valued, and not feeling valued leads to tension and resentment and wanting to seek out other opportunities. So let's say an employer does feel a little, I don't know, ticked maybe that they are, you know, now offering a little bit of a better compensation package. But it's not just that, it's that conversation you have with your associate on what value they can bring and the changes that are going to be made to improve production. And if you think let's not be myopic here, pun intended, if we think big picture, what's the big deal about paying another $1,000 a year if now you have an associate that feels valued, can commit to the practice, and will stay there over the long term? That's a huge win from an employer perspective. I don't have to tell you that staff turnover is expensive, and doctor turnover is very expensive. So if doing a little bit of this renegotiation leads to that associate feeling more valued and committed for the long term, man, that's a huge win. Who's not willing to pay a little bit for that,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's get back to your question now. So the question about negotiation, what the process is, it's tough. And I wish there was a one size fits all solution for this too. And there's just not, because different people have different preferences. Some of us prefer to negotiate in person, and that's my preferred way to do it too. Because I don't know, I like to look you in the eye, shake your hand kind of thing. And I just think that that works well, but I do this a lot, so I feel comfortable with that. And most of
Sure.
the newer docs that I speak with don't. I mean, if you think about it, who is a better negotiator, a 26-year-old applying for their first job, or a 50-year-old employer that's hired 7 associates? I mean,
Sure.
there's different strategies you can do in person. Quite a few of our colleagues choose to negotiate via email communication, and I think that's okay too. And there's strategies involved in that I discuss with our colleagues during the sessions.
Sure. Sure. Awesome. Um, Man, I feel like we could go on and on and on. This has been a really fascinating conversation. So I suppose to kind of pull it all together, if there were any kind of closing remarks, and then definitely, how folks can contact you for career consulting for ODs. But before that, again, any closing remarks, kind of key takeaways for folks tuning in.
Yeah, I think again, the point of most of these discussions is not to battle employers and ask for every penny. It's really about perspective and educating younger docs and associates in what they do and how they do adds value to the practice, and thereby creates value in them. I think from an employer perspective, like you mentioned earlier about, oh gosh, now do I have to do this to compete? Well, it's not all about money. And I'll tell you too, Eric, that quite a few of the associates that I speak with, they have 2 offers in hand. One is more of a high pay, high volume, certain type of setting. Okay. Not very full scope, if you can read between the lines. And
Sure.
another is a private practice who maybe can't afford to pay as much as this other place. And when I started doing this, I was like, oh, everyone's going to take the higher money. We're all poor. We're $250,000 in debt. We need to pay off our loans. And I was totally blown away that most younger docs, given the choice between a higher paying, more retail oriented environment or a slightly lower paying private practice, are going to take the private practice. So again, I think the future is bright, and the future for private practice is bright. I know you believe that too. And if I may leave employers who may be tuning in with one piece of advice, I guess, is there's a lot of opportunities to compete with other higher paying offers. And one strategy in which I think private practice employers are totally dropping the ball, but can have a major impact and improve upon, is mentorship. And we don't get enough of this. And millennials crave strong leadership. And the younger docs that I speak with, like I said, they're hungry, they're eager, they want to learn. And but there's a lot that we don't know. And I think one of the things we read on forums and stuff and online is, well, when you're comparing offers, go to private practice so you can learn the behind the scenes, so you can learn about the business aspects, so you can learn all this stuff, right? And I'm disappointed to say that in large part it doesn't happen. Because why? Life. And we get busy, and they start seeing more patients, and then another practice opens up, and now there's another doc to add. There's too many things that get in the way. But mentorship can go a long way. in educating their associates and learning how to read a profit loss, a balance sheet, how your production impacts your income and your paychecks. And there's just a whole lot that we don't get the opportunity to learn on in school, and carving out, I'm not talking about, yeah, every once in a while we'll talk, carving out dedicated mentorship time once a month, twice a month. I think that makes associates feel valued, because you're taking time to listen to me and educate me. And that's one of the benefits of being in private practice that you can't get elsewhere. How many people are getting mentorship seeing 45 refractions a day?
Right.
Even in ophthalmology settings, you're seeing 35 medical exams. How much time do you have possible for mentorship? Not a lot. Private practice can crush it with this strategy. And I hope more employers take notice and start to implement something like this, because again, associates want to feel valued. Associates long for mentorship and education and knowledge. And I think that all boils down to a huge opportunity for private practice growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, man. You give me the goosebumps on that, Chris. Totally. And really, and it's, again, it comes from a standpoint that look at all the opportunity, the public health need for what modern ODs are capable of providing. The public health need just continues to climb. And now we've got all these marvelous, insane specialties, this growing scope of care, this changing regulatory environment, thanks to advocacy on all these different fronts. It's fascinating. It's exciting. Okay. All right. I know you and the family have a road trip tomorrow. We promised we weren't going to go all night with this. So I suppose to kind of wrap it up, how can folks connect with you and those who are like, you know what, it's time I make a decision. I need to meet with Chris. It's time for me to do this. How can they go connect with you? Career consulting for ODs.
Yeah, I think the career consulting at odsonfinance.com. I put it in the chat box.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm also on LinkedIn. Add me on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active on the ODs on Finance Facebook page too. Shoot me a message. Be happy to chat with anyone anytime.
Excellent. Dr. Chris Lopez, man, thank you so much for joining us here on Access, talking about employment contracts and negotiations in modern optometry. On behalf of our team here at Akrinos, I'm Eric Matei signing off. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on the socials. Check out akrinos.com for the latest on all sorts of really great goodies and cool things we got going on. Chris, again, man, fare thee well. Look forward to seeing you in Vegas, and look forward to our upcoming collaboration that I think right now we'll still keep under wraps.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And if anyone here is going to Vegas, say hi to me and Eric. Be happy to chat with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. See you there. Safe travels.
All right. See ya.